Thank you for joining us this evening. I'll just give it a few more minutes. Hope everyone is doing well. I always like to see where everyone's calling in from. So if you want to pop in what state you're from, that would be super helpful. I am originally from California and then lived in Utah and Arizona for a number of years. And I've lived in Vermont for about, I can't believe it, 17 years. I don't know how it's been so long, but it's such a beautiful, wonderful state that it's kind of captured me. All right, I think, Nasser?
Yeah.
I think we're gonna get started. My name is Katie. I'm the Director of Admissions at Vermont Law School, and I just wanted to welcome you here today to our webinar on our Master of Food and Agriculture Law and Policy. So I'm gonna pass it off to Nasser in our office, but we are a small but mighty law school nestled in the Green Mountains, and we are nationally known for our environmental law program. And I would say our flagship program is our food and agriculture program. So enjoy the webinar, and my apologies, I have to step away, so you'll see me wander out, but thank you for joining and have a great webinar. And go food, I guess, food security, food policy, food labeling, all of the above.
Yeah.
All right, Nasser, I'll let you take it.
Thank you
from
for
there.
your time,
All right,
Katie.
thank you.
Hi, guys. Good to see you all this evening. As Katie just said, my name is Nasser Abdel Fattah. I work with residential master's students here on campus. I'm also originally from Staten Island, New York, and then I moved here to Vermont about almost 20 years ago, and I've been here ever since. I'm also a MFALP graduate as well from 2017. When I'm not here working in admissions, though, I actually work for the Randolph Farmers Market, managing their summer programs and working with a program called Power of Produce, which actually helps connect children to where their food is coming from. And one cool step about it is that we're actually able to pay the kids through a grant to go get more food for themselves. What I'd like to do now is just take a moment to pass it off and let everyone introduce themselves and maybe say maybe the field of an interest that they have related to the program. And yeah, so I'm going to pass it off to Genevieve. Be mind introducing yourself?
Gladly. Hi, everyone. My name is Genevieve. I am also in the admissions office, and I do specialize with master's students and with LLM students as well. So we are very pleased that you've decided to join us this evening. I can't wait to learn a little bit more about you, and I'm very excited to have our panelists share everything that they can, well, as much as they can, about our food and ag programs. Lori.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laurie Beyranavand. I am a professor at Vermont Law School and also the director of the Center for Ag and Food Systems. So what I'm interested in about this program is basically everything. I'll pass it to Shelby.
Hey everyone, my name is Shelby Calm. I'm a Master of Food and Ag Law and Policy student at Vermont Law School. Started in August. Let's see, I have a lot of interests, but lately I've been really interested in land access efforts and kind of alternative land access models for Black, Indigenous people of color.
Thank you so much, Shelby. That is awesome. So just so you guys know, going forward, we do have our Q&A that you guys are welcome to post any questions related to the program here. We will stop along the way so to address any questions that Lori or Shelby that might be able to answer right off. Towards the end of this presentation, we will go into the admission side of things, so some requirements briefly and just talking about any next steps. So please utilize the Q&A, and I'd like to pass things off to Lori so that she can get started talking about the wonderful program. Thank you so much again, Lori.
Thanks, Nasser. So it's exciting to see all where everybody's from. I see lots of people from the Northeast, but it looks like some people from other parts of the country as well. So welcome, and thank you all for coming. I was trying to think about what would be most helpful for you all in thinking about the program. And one thing that would be really helpful for me is if you wouldn't mind putting into the chat what you happen to be interested in about the program. Even though it feels like a master's in food and ag law and policy is somewhat confined, there are so many different routes that you could pursue with that particular degree, and the food system is so vast that some people decide to focus on environmental impacts of agriculture. Some people are really focused on consumer protection or public health. Some people are focused on labor protections for workers in the food system. So there's a whole host of things that you might be interested in that you could focus on in the degree. And to the extent that you know, and maybe you don't, and that's totally fine too. That's our job to help you sort of figure that out while you're here. But to the extent that you know, it would be great for you just to pop that in the chat so that I could get a sense of that. And then I can help to sort of highlight some opportunities in the program for you to focus on those things. So I thought it would also be helpful to tell you just a tiny bit about my background and how I wound up focusing in on food and ag. I'm a proud BLS grad. I graduated in 2003. And with the exception of 1 year when I went back to New Jersey, I've been in Vermont ever since. So for a long time now. And I, as a student, focused on environmental law, and I didn't really know why until later in my career when I worked at the Disability Law Project at Vermont Legal Aid, where I was focused in on providing free legal services to kids and adults to get access to healthcare and special education and guardianship. And what I realized that I had loved about environmental law was public health. And that really sort of was like hammered home for me when I worked at Legal Aid. And then when I worked at Legal Aid, what I realized was I wondered, because so many of our clients lacked access to healthy food, what the role of diet and nutrition was in some of the negative health outcomes that they were facing. So that's my sort of windy way of how I made it into the world of food and ag. And it looks like some of you all are focused in on some of these same issues, or at least interested in some of these same issues. So to tell you a little bit about the program, I mean, I'm sure you've read about it online, and I'm sure you've probably talked to some of the folks in the admissions office. Ours is a pretty one-of-a-kind program in the US. There are certainly other programs that focus in on food and nutrition, or focus in on the food system kind of generally. Ours, I think, is the only program at the master's level that hones in on law and policy. And even though it's called a master's in food and ag law and policy, I like to think of it as a master's in food system law and policy, since you really do have so many opportunities at BLS to take a ton of different types of courses and be able to focus in and hone in on the things that you might be really interested in. So because we have a really strong environmental program, that means that for students that are interested in some environmental issues, and I see someone had just said that you're interested in land use, that those are all things that you could focus in on. So water pollution, water quality, land use, air quality, environmental justice. There's a whole host of environmental courses that we recommend students think about taking depending on what it is that they're interested in. We have a new environmental justice clinic, and some of our students, a lot of their work intersects with work that we do. They focus in on CAFOs and industrial animal agriculture and the environmental justice impacts of that. And litigate, which we don't do in our clinic. So it's a nice opportunity for students that are interested in litigation, even for master's students that think at some point they might like to support lawyers in that context. That clinic gives, because they're focused on EJ doesn't mean that there aren't food and ag aspects to that. We also have a new animal law program that intersects with ours as well, because there are a lot of issues in the world of animal law, like labeling and marketing and animal protection and animal welfare that also, and the CAFO issue again pops up for the animal law advocates too. So there, and then we have our own food and ag clinic that obviously I would be remiss not to talk about our food and ag clinic, but I think Shelby will probably talk a little bit with you all about her experience in our clinic. And in our clinic, we work with food system advocates and stakeholders around the country to focus in on issues that they need support with. So we usually have a legislative advocacy project. We've started doing some transactional projects, so to help startup businesses or entities that are thinking about forming a business, to help them think about how they might want to form their business and what some of the pros and cons to doing certain things might be. And some of the issues that Shelby is focused in on too, with alternative models of land ownership, there's a lot of contracts and agreements and legal instruments that come into play in that context as well. And I would try to say like what it is that we focus on subject matter wise, but I can't really, because it sort of spans the food system. It totally depends on who comes to us with needs and how we think that that will fit in well with the way that our students are learning. And also timing is a big factor for us and for our partners to see if we can fit in a project for our students within a very sort of confined time period. Some of the people that we have worked with across the country that some of you may have heard of or maybe not, but the National Family Farm Coalition, RAFI USA. We have worked with the Harvard Food Law and Policy Clinic. They're not really a client per se, but we've worked with them on some bigger picture policy projects. We've also worked with students at Johns Hopkins. So there are opportunities, I would say, for you to work both with advocacy groups in the food system and people that are working on the ground, but then also students at other schools that are working with partners, and opportunities for you to pair up with some of those students and do some sort of big picture work that we usually have, we send to reviewers. We don't necessarily have a client dictating what that will look like, but we usually have a set of reviewers to make sure that the things we're saying aren't totally crazy and uninformed so that they can provide a practical check on us. One thing I think is really important for you all to know about the center is that we try really hard to center equity and justice in the work that we do. So every project that we take on, we run through a project screen, and one component of that project screen is to think about the justice and equity components of that work. And if there aren't a lot, then sometimes we'll decide not to take on that particular project. But it's really important to us that we're providing support to entities and organizations that are either run by underrepresented or underserved individuals in the food system, or that serve those populations. That's something that we've really tried hard to focus in on and center in the work that we do. I think the last thing that I'll say, because I feel like I've been talking for a long time, is that there's sort of no end to the types of jobs. For those of you who are focused in on like what you think you might want to do when you graduate, or what would it look like after you get a degree like this, and where could you go work? Our students kind of go all over the place. So some of them go to federal agencies like USDA and FDA. A lot of them go to NGOs. So we have a student who graduated pretty recently and became the executive director of what's called the Artisan Grain Collaborative, which is really exciting, and I think was kind of unexpected for her to graduate and launch right into a position like that. We've had students that have gone on to work for the Conservation Law Foundation, for the National Sustainable Ag Coalition, the National Young Farmers Coalition, the National Farm to School Network. They're kind of all over the place. And then in a bunch of places in Vermont too. And the Nature Conservancy is another big one. So we have alums all over the place. They're all really excited to meet new alums and to help support new alums and thinking about career options and where you might go. So that's a strong network that we try to connect you all with to make sure that you feel like you have people to reach out to when you start thinking about employment and jobs. So I think I'll stop talking, but if I'm obviously here for any questions that people have, and I'm going to take a look at the chat too while I'm not talking, and then I can think about if I have some other things that might be helpful for you all.
Thank you so much, Lori. And to everybody that's on this webinar, please utilize the Q&A. If you have any questions related to what Lori's saying, please feel free to write into that. I guess, Lori, along these lines, and Genevieve, if you can think of any questions to help with this as well, is there anything that you'd like to speak to in terms of when you first meet with the students and when they first come here in the fall, what does that look like for them when they're starting here?
So for me, what that looks like is typically there's a period, an orientation period when students come. And then I usually meet with the MFALPs to help them think about their course planning. And usually that involves, I don't always know, unfortunately, I mean, they have a better sense of what all the courses are that are being offered than I do. So fortunately, they come with a list of courses, and then a lot of times I ask them what it is that they think that they might be interested in and what they want to focus on, and then we look at all the courses. So like we look at all the environmental courses, we look at all the any of the RJ restorative justice courses that they might be interested in. And obviously like make sure that they're checking off all their requirements, and then thinking about what the summer session will look like, which isn't always set by the time they come, unfortunately. But we do like to change it and think about like how to make it better each summer and think about what students might be interested in. So there's that advising that happens. And then I was fortunate to teach a master's class this fall. So I got to know a lot of the master's students pretty personally, which was nice. Like Shelby was in my class. And so that was a nice opportunity to help them if they had questions. I feel like they had a lot of easy access to me. But there's also Whitney that works with me in the Center for Ag and Food Systems, is a MFALP grad, and she has a lot of great insight about classes and courses. And Claire, who is the assistant director of the center, is also a MFALP grad. So similarly, I mean, the courses have changed since they were enrolled, but they have a pretty good sense of the courses, and both of them are always happy and willing to meet with students too. So I feel like we probably don't, during those first like days of orientation, they're pretty crammed up, so we don't get to see them as much as we might like. But there are certainly opportunities for them to see us and talk to us, and we try to make ourselves as available as possible.
Thank you so much for that, Lori. And I guess along those notes, I kind of think I'll pose this question towards you, Shelby. As you know, given your background and experience, how did you find that transition from your previous spot to where you are now and coming into the law school? Was there anything that surprised you? Anything that you had to adjust or you need to use for support? But yeah, how was your first semester, and how did that all go for you?
Yeah, I guess one of the biggest surprises, even though I knew this program was housed within a law school, was the reality of that, and how I now kind of like look at this program and the master's program as like law school light, and how, you know, as Professor Bayranovan mentioned, there are some master specific classes that you can take, and those have been really valuable to be able to kind of work with all of the different students from all of the different master's programs. But, you know, there were some classes where I was just thrown into like working alongside second and third year law students, which was initially a little bit intimidating, but a challenge that wasn't insurmountable. But that was definitely something that was surprising, I guess, trying to kind of understand and navigate like the law school world, knowing that I didn't want to be a lawyer and wasn't in the JD program. But I mean, yeah, so far it's been really valuable, and I have appreciated the amount of flexibility in a lot of the classes that, you know, to echo what Professor Bayranovan said, like you really can focus in on your interests and really develop your interests. And that has been something that has just been incredibly valuable and really given me more confidence to feel a little bit more like an issue area expert in fields that I'm interested in, which was kind of the goal in doing this program. So yeah, those are some initial thoughts and being a semester plus in.
Thank you
I
so much.
will say, Nasser, I just have one thing to say about that. So in my food regulation and policy class, I do blind grading. So all the final exams are turned in just with like a student ID number. And I have almost always had a master's student get one of the top grades in that class, which is so interesting. So even though you're thrown in with classes with second and third year students, not to say that the second and third year students are lazy in any way, but the master's students are really focused. And in particular, the master's in food and ag students are really focused and they're really high performing. So it certainly is not an insurmountable. It probably feels tough at first, I would guess. But then I think it starts to get a little bit easier.
Yeah, and I will say there was a ton of support. I mean, through the class with you, I took legal and policy writing, which was really valuable, and academic success, and just the environment is just set up to they want you to succeed. So there's so many different resources. The resource librarians have been like my best friends. So yeah, it's challenging, but there's a lot of support to help get you through it.
Thank you so much for that, Shelby. And just to mirror off your point, I had the very similar experience when I did my MFALP degree as well. Utilizing academic support and then all the resources in the library really make that difference. And I don't want to brag, but there are a couple law classes I took where I got the higher grade in, and that was solely because I went to academic support and they helped me map out the timeline for the final project and all the check-ins, and it really made a really big difference. And while we're on this note here, Shelby, we have a question in our Q&A, and this is asking more about what does a typical daily or weekly schedule for a master's student look like?
I don't really know what's typical. I feel like last semester to this semester is so different, but generally, I guess last semester I had like 3 classes, Monday, Wednesday, a class Tuesday, Thursday, and then Friday through Sunday off. This semester I am taking a class Monday, Wednesday, and then have ag clinic Wednesday, and then kind of clinic hours that I need to meet throughout the week. So it's a little bit more flexible, which is kind of nice. But it was nice to have that structure in the first semester to kind of get into time management. But yeah, so I guess in terms of course load, I took 12 credits in the first semester, which was, you know, challenging. I was out of undergrad for a while. I graduated undergrad in 2014. So it took a little bit to get back into it, but I feel like the course load, the schedule and / course load is set up in a way that's meant to be manageable. And even though it was a lot of work, I felt like it was still totally possible to maintain balance and to maintain a sense of, to get into activities outside of school too, and kind of get into things that are going on in the community. I know that was a little bit more broad of like time management versus schedule, but hope that answered the question.
I think that was a really great explanation. If there's a follow-up though, we will monitor it. But you did say one thing that probably some participants might be curious about. You were talking about the clinic and doing your hours. And can you speak to how about a day? How did that process work? How did you get involved with the clinic? What are you doing now? And then if there's anything you want to highlight, please do.
Cool. Yeah, so one of the reasons I was attracted to this program is because of the work that the Center for Ag and Food Systems was doing. So I was working in sustainable ag policy in Maryland and kind of kept seeing these reports and work that CAFS was doing, and had already been looking at the program, but that kind of piqued my interest. And so when I first got here in August, I wasn't planning on doing the clinic at all because I kind of felt like, oh, I have work experience and I really want to hone in on research and other things. But I met with Whitney Shields, who's the MFALP graduate that Professor Bayranovin mentioned, who now works in CAFS, and she really recommended the clinic as a way to develop more relationships with people in CAFS, learn more about the work that's going on. And so far, it's been one of the most valuable pieces of this program. It's just great to work with a small group of other students. It's really intimate. You really get to kind of develop relationships with them and develop relationships with people working within the Center for Ag and Food Systems. I am working on a project right now. We're developing policy recommendations to support urban farmers, specifically what the USDA defines as socially disadvantaged urban farmers. So BIPOC, queer, women, urban farmers. So that has been great. And it's been really interesting to be able to have connections and build conversations with urban farmers throughout the country, and then kind of be a mouthpiece for them in developing policy. And then in terms of kind of what that schedule looks like, we meet once a week for a few hours as a group. And then other than that, it's pretty independent. There is kind of as much or as little support as you'd like. There are different project leads that you will be working with, and they're kind of always there if you have questions or need more detail about something. But if you are somebody that works really independently, you can kind of strengthen that skill too. So it's been a really great experience so far.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that experience with us, Shelby. Lori, I guess I just want to pivot some questions over to you. If you had any questions or any recommendations for students that are interested in the clinic, if there's any other experiences that you think that the participants might be interested in hearing about, yeah, I'll hand it off to you.
Great, thank you. And I apologize in advance. My kids are upstairs. I hear them running overhead. So if you hear anything loud like that, that's them, unfortunately. So one thing I wanted to say, I took a look through some of the chat comments to see what people were interested in. And I saw a lot of people interested in food access and food and nutrition security. I saw some people that were interested in food safety, or what sounded like food safety, but not necessarily identified as food safety. And then some people interested in supporting farmers and food entrepreneurs. And I would say that we have classes that are focused on those things. So we have a local farm and food law course that is really sort of practically focused. So it's focused on trying to help people who are thinking about how to support farm and food businesses. We also, in some of our courses focus talk about food safety in general terms, but I would say, and food access and food and nutrition security, I think that's a theme in a lot of our different courses. But as I was reading through this, I was like, oh, wow, we have a project basically that has focused in on each one of these things. So there are really practical opportunities, I think, for students. you know, courses are great, courses are wonderful. They can give you an introduction to a subject matter, or they can do like a deep dive into a subject matter. The course that I teach right now is like a really deep dive into the food part of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. And I think it's really foundational and important for students to understand like how food gets regulated by FDA, because they're just so sort of all over the food supply. And we really do take a deep dive into it. But like food safety is a component of what FDA regulates. And, you know, we spend 2 days on food safety. Like we can't really get into the nuts and bolts of the Food Safety Modernization Act and all the various regulations that are, you know, 40 pages long each, regulating different rules that FDA has created under FSMA. But we do in our clinic usually always have a project that focuses in on food safety to some degree for some group. I think this semester it's the National Sustainable Ag Coalition. Is that right?
Yeah, and even the farmers market
Yes.
project looking at food safety too. So
Yeah. Yeah, and food safety is a big issue for food businesses. It's also a really complicated one to navigate. So it's not one of the sexier issues that we focus on, but I think it's really practical, and it's good grounding for students, and it's just super useful for to have knowledge of it, to be able to support people in the food system, that whether it's farmers or whether it's small food businesses, it's difficult to get that knowledge. And it's nice to be able to do that in this program. We also have a project called the Healthy Food Policy Project, and that entire project is focused on food access and food security, and trying to keep a database of sorts of local level laws that are focused on food access and food security. We have a really great advisory council that helps think about like resources that we should develop to help promote some of those different laws and policies. One that we just created pretty recently is about authentic community engagement and how to really communicate with residents in a community to think about what it is that they need and what they want, and to use the knowledge that's in that community to help build policies. And then to think about how to use the database, to draw from the database from other areas to think about what a policy could look like at the local level. So that, and then we do a lot of curbside consulting on the Healthy Food Policy Project. So we have like office hours, and people from different like planners and people that are municipal officials come and have questions about food policies. And so that's been a really nice and sort of rich and rewarding project. And then bigger picture, like someone in CAST is working on a resilience report right now that focuses a lot on food security and nutrition security. And then I'm working on a toolkit that's for other countries to think about how to build national food strategies that are bigger than just focused on food and nutrition security, so that they can achieve that goal, but be thinking about it sort of bigger picture. So that's certainly, I mean, it was nice to see so many people interested in that. It's certainly a running theme throughout the projects that we work on in CAFS. And as Shelby said, you know, the center it's both kind of like well, I don't even know how to describe it, like a think tank, advocacy organization, academic sort of research, something that's grant funded. So we produce all of these reports and issue briefs, and students have the opportunity to work on them. But then we also have the curriculum side of things, which is the clinic has a lot of these projects in the clinic, but then there's an educational component to the clinic as well. And then we have our sort of normal courses that we run. So I think it's a really rich opportunity for students to be able to do some research, to be able to take some classes, and to be able to feel like some of the work that they're doing is really having an impact.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. That's such great information there. And I'll use that though as another gateway for you guys. Please, if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A so that we can use so that we can ask Lori. And one question that I was going to pose to Shelby actually isn't so much related to classes. It's more related to the Vermont culture. So like, how did it feel when you first came to campus? And apologies, my brain is spacing on whether or not you said you're from Vermont or not. If you are, my apologies. But yeah, if you would like to just talk about how it was coming to Vermont. I don't know if you maybe want to speak a little bit about the winter and how and all of that great stuff that's coming through. But yeah, I would just like to hand it off to you, Shelby. And again, anybody that has any questions, please put them in the Q&A. And yeah.
All right, Vermont. So yeah, I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, and spent most of my life there. And our winters are very different. Our winters are like the wintry mix mostly, and like the occasional blizzard that freaks everybody out. So I did live in Western Mass for a winter, which was kind of like an appetizer to Vermont winter. We didn't have like the negative degree. It didn't go as far down into the negatives. But honestly, like, you adapt, you wear long underwear and you bundle up and double up on your vitamin D supplement, and you just embrace it. And I actually got into snowshoeing, so that was really fun. And I bought myself a pair of ice skates. So just learning how to stay outside and stay active and really enjoy all that the snow has to offer. I hadn't really experienced in winter with as much snow. So it was, now I feel like I prefer winters with real snow and not just like slushy, dirty snow on the side of the road that like reminds you of what winter could be. And then I guess other aspects of Vermont, I mean, it's so beautiful here. I'm really smitten. And in terms of food and ag, this part of the country and this state in particular is just such a model. And there's so much neat work happening in the food and ag space. And I feel really lucky to be so close to a lot of those initiatives, even ones that are happening outside of the school or kind of in conjunction with the school and the community. There have been, let's see, I guess as part of some of those projects, there have been like community groups that have met up. For example, like Everytown Vermont is a project of the Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust, and they have like community meetings every few months that I've attended, and it's just been so welcoming. I mean, I feel like a lot of the initiatives, community-led initiatives that I've been involved with, even outside of the school, have just been really welcoming, and I've really felt at home here in a way that I wasn't totally expecting. So yeah, I guess I'm kind of biased because I'm in love with Vermont now and maybe not giving as neutral of a perspective, but I think it's a great place. And even if you don't end up falling totally in love like I did, it's just a really wonderful place to learn and to experience even for a limited period of time. Even if you're not outdoorsy, there are also other things. I mean, there's a really nice sense of community here within the school too that has been really valuable and special to be a part of.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Shelby, for your honesty. So yeah, we're kind of coming towards the end of the PowerPoint, of the end of our webinar right now. So I just kind of wanted to give a chance to anybody that might have had any last second questions so that we can ask of Lori or Shelby. What we would like to do next is transition into the admission side of things. So that's where Genevieve and I will talk about the admissions requirements and other resources that we have on campus. But I'd like to just give you guys a couple seconds to post any questions though for Lori or Shelby. And if either of you guys have anything you guys want to conclude with from what you were talking about, for any takeaways for the attendees, that would be wonderful as well. And yeah.
So I will wrap up a couple of questions that we've received. I know that our primary focus is talking about a residential master's in food and ag here tonight. But as you two know, and quite a few of our attendees know, we do have online options as well. What is great about our master's programs is that the curriculum is the same. And the tuition is the same, and the community is the same. They are so similar across the board. But Lori, would you take a moment to talk about like experiential ways that online students could fulfill experiential requirements for their masters? And then afterwards, Shelby, if you, I feel like I'm going to be a bad online enrollment counselor for a second because I cannot remember if you've taken an online class. I feel like you have.
I
but
have
if you
not, but I've registered. I like
registered and dropped because of a clinic opportunity or
registered and
something.
dropped
No,
a lot,
yeah,
yeah.
yep. No. I get that. We get that a lot. But if you would then, Lori, talk about how online students can complete those kind of experiential requirements. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. It's funny, we were just talking about in the curriculum committee today whether online students could be in clinics. And it was, I think, a little bit easier during COVID because everything was on Teams. I don't know how that's going to look in the future. I think everybody's really interested in trying to find opportunities for the online students to be able to be in the clinic. The challenge is always the synchronous times that the clinic meets. So I think if an online student was able to be available at the time that the rest of the clinic students are meeting for their rounds and for the other clinic sessions, that would probably be fine. That's just sort of a challenge, I think, logistically for the online students if they have another job. But I am working right now with an online student who is my research assistant. And it might be one of the best research assistants I've ever had in my life. I can't say enough great things about her. And we meet once a week for a half hour or so. She is helping me. We have a sort of long-standing project called the Blueprint for a National Food Strategy. We released an update report on that in 2021 after COVID. And now we're working, since the UN Food System Summit is done, we are working on sort of like an international issue brief for other countries. And it's a toolkit that we're working on with the Harvard Food Law and Policy Clinic. And she's doing some research internationally on other countries and different food strategies that they've created. And every week is like blowing my mind, being like, I looked at Belize and Pakistan, and just like has like a whole list of pros and cons and her analysis of their food strategies. So that's been really fun, and it's been really nice to get to know an online student so intimately. I feel like she's thinking about coming to graduation. I was like, you should come, I'll take you out to dinner. So that's been really fun. And other online students have been RAs in the past as well. I think that's always kind of tricky, like being able to juggle the online classes, a job, and being an RA, like, and doing like a really substantial project, like what she's focused on. But she's doing it in lieu of a course right now. So I think that's been a little bit easier for her. And then I've had other online students who have done independent research projects with me. So they come up with an idea of something they want to research, and then they do, however many credits adds up to however many pages. But then I work with them on their independent research project, and that's been a really nice opportunity to get to know online students too. So, and not just with me, I mean, there's other people in CAPS that they've worked with also. So that's been a great way to get to know the online students a little bit more, since they don't get to see us the same way as the residential students do. And maybe they get sick of us anyway. I don't know.
Well, and then there's kind of another interesting follow-up that we have some students who say start their degree as a residential student and then get a work opportunity, or like if something happens that they can't continue residentially and might transition to online, or vice versa, they start online and become an online student. If you are going through that conversation with somebody, what are some of the things that they should have in mind? For example, if I'm talking to an online student, we talk a lot about other responsibilities that take up their time. A typical online student is probably a professional or has other usually full-time commitments that are not education related. So it's kind of a transition to flip it then so that their residential classes are that full-time commitment. What other kinds of things, like you talk about scheduling classes that might have only been scheduled in the fall, but they're coming here for the spring?
Yeah, that's tricky. No, I'm glad that you asked it. I would say it's always important to know, I'm always focused on like making sure that they meet their requirements. So whenever I'm advising them and thinking about like what it is that they're going to take, to just make sure if they're switching from online and coming in the spring, if there's a requirement that they didn't take that we only offer in the fall, then I would just tell them that they probably, if they want to be able to finish within a certain time, that they're probably going to have to take that course online if they don't want to wait to take it again in the fall. Sometimes we're able to waive things. That really depends on people's background and experience. So that's always a possibility, but I would say for students who are thinking about that, if you're thinking that you might start online and then transfer and become residential, or not transfer, but change it up and become residential, just be conscious of what the degree requirements are, and then be conscious of when those are offered residentially, so that you make sure that whatever it is that you need to take, if it's only offered in the fall, that you've done that if you're coming in the spring, or vice versa. I think most of our requirements are in the fall. So it would be, they'd really want to focus on taking the required courses online, and then they'd have the electives open to take in the spring. Or if they're going to do the opposite, then in the fall, I think they could take whatever they wanted residentially and then go online and do the requirements, because the requirements are offered online pretty regularly. So that would be my one piece of advice, is just keep track of the requirements, make sure you're getting your requirements out of the way, and don't think that you can come like at any time residentially and they're just like, the requirements are always available, because they're not, unfortunately. But they're more often available online.
Thank you, Lori.
Yeah.
And then before we move into kind of nuts and bolts of application and things, there's an interesting question. And I think I'd like both of you to consider it. I think Nasser probably wants both of you to consider it too. What is your favorite part of food and agriculture law and policy and the master's? The academic work or the policy work?
Well, I'm not doing any of the academic work anymore. I wish I was. I wish I was taking classes, unless you mean academic research, because I do that too. I mean, I do scholarly research that's separate and distinct from what I do in CAFs. I don't know. I like both of them a lot. I mean, I feel like being in academia, you're so privileged in the sense that you get to just like be really interested in something and then research it. It's a job that I feel like not a lot of people have or get the luxury of just being like, I'm so interested in this really weird part of this one law, so I'm going to research it for a year and write an article about it. And I love being able to do that. And I get really into looking at legislative history and just like a lot of like dorky research things, which is really fun for me. But I do the same thing with a lot of our policy work too. But the beauty of that is that I feel like we're actually like doing it for someone, and somebody might actually read it, and it might have an impact. So that feels really, coming from advocacy and working at legal aid in particular to academia, felt hard for me because I felt like I was leaving behind a big piece of why I went to law school, and being able to work in CAFs and do the work that we do helps to fulfill that piece. So I feel like I kind of have, I feel really lucky to have like the perfect job for me. And subject matter wise, I'm just a really intellectually curious person. So you could probably ask me to research almost anything and I'd be pretty excited to do it. So I feel like I've focused in on a lot of different things in the food system that I have found interesting, and it's all been really rewarding and valuable. And there's just so much to research. So it's just a really rich area. So I know that's kind of a non-answer, but that's my answer.
I feel like my answer is going to echo a lot of those thoughts. I mean, I came from working in the sustainable ag policy advocacy world. And so I was really looking for an opportunity to kind of delve into the academic side of things and like really drill into certain issues and have a deeper understanding of all of these things that I was kind of working on from a more academic perspective. That being said, working on policy and doing some of the clinic work that I'm doing now, it's also a great reminder of like why I got into this work and why I really love this field. And yeah, being able to kind of use your expertise for good and to help people like farmers and land stewards do what they're doing better, or do what they're like, support what they're already doing. Not to say that like that they need to do anything better. Yeah, so I'm really enjoying like being in both worlds. I don't know if it's something that these are two worlds that I want to be in forever. I mean, definitely the policy side of things. And I think, yeah, without having the practical piece, the academic side might feel a little, I don't know, I might feel tired of it, but like you're saying, Professor Bayranovan, it's like having that balance seems really neat. And then in terms of subject area, I mean, I kind of talked about this a little bit, but really interested in land trusts and community land trusts, and specifically like how we can use some of those models to protect and secure agricultural land is really fascinating to me. So it's been nice to be able to dig into that here.
Thank you both so much. Nasser.
Oh, I was just about to say I was just about to tell both of them thank you. And yeah, from what I can see in the Q&A, there's no more questions related to the program. We do only have about 6 minutes or so left. So I think with this time, Genevieve and I can start talking about the admissions deadline and requirements. Lori and Shelby, you guys are welcome to stay on the call as long as you want. I totally understand though if you guys have other things, but we're gonna wrap up and just talk about admission process and next steps. But Lori and Shelby, thank you so much for your time. And yeah, again, thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thanks for those of you who came, and Genevieve and Nasser and Shelby, thank you all.
Yeah, no, thank you everyone. And I'm putting my email in the chat so that if people want
Yeah, I'll do that too.
Totally welcome too.
Good idea.
Thanks everyone.
Have a great night, guys.
You too.
Sweet. Hi guys, so thank you for everyone who's still sticking around. This is the next part where we'll talk about the admissions process. Genevieve, I don't know how you feel about this. I was thinking about doing the PowerPoint, but I'm thinking more of just doing like a verb, just kind of talking about the admissions process right now. So right off the bat, you guys, I just want to start by letting you know on April 2nd, that's a Saturday from 11 to 12, we will be doing a full hour-long presentation going into tips and tricks for the master's degree application. This conversation right now is just going to be brief in terms of the important parts to take away from the app. But again, next Saturday, if you guys are interested, we will be going more in depth about the process. So yeah, and so just to get started, when working on the master's application for Vermont Law School, you'll fill out the basic app that we have on our website. Genevieve, I don't know if you have a moment, could you possibly link that application to that? Thank you so much. So with the application, it's a pretty simple form. You're going to go through and fill out all the required information about yourself. There's also a place for character and fitness, which is, I'd like to just spend a few seconds just saying, please be honest and thoughtful when going through those questions. It's really important that you check those boxes honestly. And if you have anything that you need to speak about, that you do include that with your application. Within the application itself, once you have all of those parts, there is going to be sections for you to include documentation. So one thing that we require is an essay, and this essay is basically speaking about what you want to do with your master's degree and how do you feel Vermont Law School is going to get you where you want to go. So really, it's 1 to 2 pages at the most. You really just precise, consistent writing that shows us a really good example of yourself. Another essay that we have, there are 2 more that are optional. One can kind of be linked to the first essay. So let's say you're working on something in the field that's really motivating you to get the master's degree. This will be a chance for you to talk about it. It can be maybe volunteer work, a current job that you have now. Maybe it's a community project that you're working on. And that's essentially that first optional essay. The second optional essay that we have, I like to use the phrase, if you feel your GPA on your transcript does not accurately reflect yourself, this gives you a chance to put in a statement and defend. One example that I use is myself. I took a hydrology class when I was a junior at my undergrad. I somehow got in with none of the prerequisites, and that really messed up my semester, having to focus a lot of time on hydrology as opposed to my other classes. So I can write to the admissions committee, a little blurb going, this is what I did. And if you look at my transcript, you can see a trend of me, doing really well, hitting the speed bump, but then continuing well on my way through. So yeah, that's just a little bit about the essay. Another thing that you guys will be able to attach when you go through is a resume and CV. This is professional based. So one thing I would steer away from is anything that's like a business card or website links. It needs to be a resume that's that defines you. Think of it as something that if we didn't have a reference or if we didn't have your example writing, you want this resume and CV to really shine and show everyone what you are capable of. Another requirement that we have is we require 2 at the minimum and at the most 4 letters of recommendation. These can come from professional or academic references. So if you're currently an undergrad and you have an advisor or any professors that you're close with that can speak to your good work, please lean on that. If you're someone that's maybe been out of academics for a few years, but you've been doing a lot of work, professional is a good route to go. You'll have, supervisors, anyone that oversaw or worked with you can really talk about that. But again, you have a minimum of 2, maximum of 4, and you just want to find the people that are really going to shine and really make you look good on your own going forward. Next, in terms of the requirements for the letters of recommendation, there is a section in the application for you to fill out the contact information that'll be asking for their name, their email, and their phone number. Through our system, they will get notified about uploading the letters of reference, but we really ask that you guys keep in communication with your LORs so that they're ready to upload it when the time comes. And yeah, so once you have all of those materials, you're gonna hit apply, you're gonna hit submit on your application. What that looks like for you is you'll be in communication with myself, possibly Genevieve, about anything that's missing, transcripts from your undergraduate institution or other institutions, keep track with you about where your letters of recommendation are at, and then also letting you know when you move into the next stages of review. In talking about this, I realized we are running out of time, but I forgot to touch on transcripts, so I'd really like to put a blurb in on that. In the application, you will have a place to put in all of your previous education, whether it's undergrad institution, master's degrees, etc. With all of those that you put into the app, it's important that you also work with that school's registrar to have your unofficial or your official degree granting transcript submitted to us. That's the requirement for the school. We will take unofficials as a to pre-look at your application beforehand, but we do need your official transcripts though before you start any classes here. And yeah, and again, that's the whole application process in a nutshell, I'd like to say. In terms of deadlines, because I did see a couple questions I think related to that. April 15th is when we is our deadline for the MFALP starting in the fall. If for some reason though, any one of you guys are running into any snags with your application, it's really important that you just reach out to us. If life happens, there are circumstances, we will work with you though to help you get your application in. So don't feel that if once April 15th comes that the door is shut. It's not. We will, if you're communicating with us, we will happily work with you and help you with those next steps. So yeah, that was a lot that I just threw at you guys. Genevieve, do you have any follow-ups on anything that I missed that may need to be elaborated a little more on? I'm just trying to make sure that I don't go over too much here.
No, thank you, Nasa. It's a really great thing to try to be conscious of everybody's time, and it's either late or just getting to the evening for a lot of our attendees. So my question is, do you have the registration link for the April 2nd webinar? And can we put it in? If not, I can link into our webinar pages. I just don't have a registration link. Because, thank you. Because one of what NASA was drawing attention to are all of the materials that are required for the application to be considered. And so at the root of that, the question of what qualifies somebody to be eligible to pursue one of our master's degrees is that they do have a prior bachelor's degree completion, either an institution based in the United States or internationally. Those admissions requirements can be found on our main master's admissions pages. I linked that just a few moments ago, but as Nasser was getting to towards the end there is that if you have questions, if there are kind of circumstances that you're not certain are typical, contact one of us in the admissions office. We are here to help through that process, and we've fielded a lot of questions over the time that we've been here, so certainly feel confident that you can contact us and get answers to your specific questions and about your specific situation. And join us on April 2nd. We'll have a couple of guests with us, and we'll really dig into the application process with a good few weeks before the application deadline itself. I see Nasser's just thrown in that registration link. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome.
Mm-hmm. And we haven't had many additional questions. We've had a few, thanks, I think, prior to when Professor Bayronov and Shelby were leaving us. But now that we are past time, it's probably time to say good evening or good afternoon.
Right, good evening and good afternoon. We'll use that as a close off. So yeah, thank you guys so much for your time, and thank you for bearing with us as we went over about 5 minutes. But yeah, you'll see that I just posted the registration link to the April 2nd webinar, and I also posted my email as well. So if you guys have any questions, Genevieve just posted hers, please let us know. If any of you would like any follow-ups with, Shelby or possibly Lori, we're happy to help you with that.
Either of us. So those would be really great. Both Leah and I'm going to say Jane, but I can't see everything. It's abbreviated, truncated. Yes, contact our admissions office because we certainly can discuss transfer credits, your specific situation. There were a lot of questions about online and in person and how to make those things meet. It will just be much more beneficial to have that as kind of a one-on-one conversation. So please contact us by email. We can set up appointments pretty easily. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. You guys all have a great night, and yeah, we'll see you again shortly. Take care.